Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar from MBS. This one is titled Kitchen and Bathroom Manufacturers, How to Get Specified. And hopefully this is what we're going to teach you is how, if you are a kitchen and bathroom manufacturer, you can get your products into specifications and your brands in front of the specification community. Just a few housekeeping rules to begin with. All attendees' microphones are muted. If you've got any questions, feel free to ask them, but we'll record these and we'll follow them up individually after the webinar. We tend to get quite a lot sent through, so hopefully you don't mind that happening. If anybody wants to find out more, you can visit the mbs.com/manufacturers, or you can visit manufacturers@thembs.com and send us an email through that link. So today, running the panel is myself. My name's Lee Jones. I'm the head of manufacturer solutions at MBS. I've been with MBS now for 3 years, and I do a whole host of different things from production, sales, marketing, product development. I'm involved with a lot of different things. Primarily, though, I've spent my whole career in the construction product manufacturing sector, so 20 years, just over. It was about 22, 23. And a large portion of that was in the kitchen and bathroom sector. I've worked for a lot of the big companies internationally, but some SMEs as well. And over the past 10 years, I really developed a strength in BIM and become a specialist in BIM, which has helped me work with MBS, one, from having the manufacturer's view from that side of the fence, but also having the digital adoption capabilities and the knowledge there as well. Alongside that, for my sins, I'm also a qualified architectural technologist, so seeing the specification side of the business and the needs there is also something that I can hopefully share my knowledge with. Joining me later in the panel is Tom Reynolds. Tom's the Chief Executive for the Bathroom Manufacturers Association, and Tom's going to give us an overview of what the BMA does and why specification, etc., is important to its members. But I'll introduce Tom later when we get to that particular part, and let's begin. So just for anybody that's interested in MBS, for the past 50 years, we're part of the Royal Institute of British Architects. We were founded by them, but we're now part of the Big Factor Group. Big Factor are one of the largest construction technology companies in the world. And alongside the MBS brand in the UK, we also have our sister company now, Glenigan. But we also have a lot of presence now across Europe and also other parts of the world. MBS itself, we tend to have two customer streams. One is the specification community. So this could be architects, contractors, engineers, you name it. They would use the specification tools that MBS provide to write the specifications. So if you're a manufacturer, what that means is that your customers effectively are our customers. But alongside that, we also provide an unrivaled platform for manufacturers to actually host their product information, get their brands noticed, but actually get those products and brands into written specifications. It's something that I'm going to show later on. I'm going to do a live demonstration of the MBS platform, and hopefully that will all make sense how it works and how everything connects. So just to touch on who this webinar is for, I'm guessing through the invites and the fact that people have registered, it would be pretty obvious, but it's aiming at kitchen and bathroom product manufacturers. Now, it doesn't matter whether you're working in the commercial or residential sectors. If you just want to know how specification works, maybe, or if you're just actually actively looking now to get in front of more specifiers and ultimately win more orders, it's for you. We're also going to touch on BIM and how that fits in with specification and the design process. So there's a little bit of something for everybody, and it's a high level view. And as we've mentioned previously, if you do want to know more after this, feel free to drop us a note. So what I'm going to cover today, I'm going to look at MBS user demand for kitchen and bathroom products. We have thousands of specifiers using our tools day in, day out. We also have thousands of manufacturers listing their products within the platform too. And we're going to talk about how those are searched, used, and ultimately why there is demand and how we know about that demand for them. We'll talk about what is a specification and how you can target specifiers for your particular brands and products. We're then going to give you a live demo of how kitchens and bathrooms get specified with MBS. So this will cover the MBS platforms, MBS Source and MBS Chorus, which are the two key ones. But we'll also touch on BIM and CPD as well within that. We'll then look at how visualization can play a role in this. Obviously, with kitchen and bathroom products, as well as being commodity, they're also very high on the aesthetic agenda. So people that are specifying these products really want to know what they're going to look like and be able to do those visualizations, as well as specifying the performance criteria. And then we'll then touch on sustainability and safety considerations as well. Obviously, these two things are really high up in priority when it comes to specifying now. We haven't gone sort of a day since the COVID pandemic started to ease where sustainability hasn't been at the forefront of the news, particularly with the launch of the IPCC report that's happened in the past couple of weeks. So, yep, we'll cover that, and hopefully it'll all fit in and you'll be able to get an understanding of how the whole cycle works. So, what are the requirements for kitchens and bathrooms? Well, in MBS, obviously having the view across the specification community and from the manufacturers, we get to see a lot of data in regards to what's happening with respect to specifications. We've got over 1,000 manufacturers hosted on our platform, MBS Source, and we've got over 3,500 practices using the MBS specification tools. Now, this as practices, some of these practices will have multiple seats software licenses. You got right down to the small end where you might have the sort of the one-man band, one-woman band working from their home office using something like Chorus SmallWorks, which is a lighter version of the package. Over the past few months, we've seen over 3,000 UK projects. These have had kitchens specified in them, and we've had over 5,000 projects with bathrooms. So for some commercial developments, that could be like an industrial unit. Obviously, a kitchen might not be applied there, but bathrooms are always required, hence the sort of slightly larger number of specifications for bathrooms, but kitchens are absolutely solid as well. And then alongside that, all of those products that we host for those manufacturers, there's been thousands of those specified within those particular project specifications as well. Just an example of some of the search terms. So this is just to back up the fact that people are actually looking for your product types. So what we've got here is an example of some of the search terms that are entered into the MBS website. You can see there that kitchen is the second most searched term. Now that's quite generic. People will type in the room sometimes and it will throw back multiple different products. In the live demo later, when I show you how the platform works, it'll become understandable how they can then get that back. But if you look at a lot of those, we've highlighted in this infograph in the darker color blue, the products that are applicable to these two sectors. And you can see that the majority of the products that make up the requirements for these type of spaces are really, really high up in the agenda on the search terms. There's also the types of specifiers that you need to target, and these have individual needs. So these could be architects, which could require obviously your specification information, the actual product data structured in a format that will be able to be applied to the specification, but also things like bin models, if they're doing the development designs and so forth. And then the MEP engineers, obviously anything that's plumbed or has electrical connections really needs to go through the specialists, particularly if it's a large scale project. So in this particular example here on the image, we've got something that's high rise, and obviously the connections and services that run through something like that are absolutely immense. So it might be that your products have plumbing connections, they might have electrical connections, making sure that you've got the details of those, the outputs, etc., within the data, but also within the BIM geometry, which is something that I can show later on as well, is suited for those. And then last but not least, the interior designers. So going back to that commodity versus aesthetic situation, interior designers will work quite widely with kitchens and bathrooms, whether it's residential or whether it's commercial. Obviously with things like restaurants, hotels, etc., people spend an absolute amount of money to get their bathrooms and washrooms and kitchens looking correct. So people remember their experience. And likewise with residential, people spend a lot of time in these places and they want them to look good as well. So appointing an interior designer is something that's quite common, and it's a professional role that might be a target for you to actually get your products into the spec as well. There's then the different sectors. So residential, obviously kitchens and bathrooms are quite wide in, but they also sit within education, healthcare, leisure, and the commercial sector. And irrespective of whether your particular brand supplies products to one, two, maybe all of those different sectors, there's a functionality within the MBS platform that can actually help you to gain specifications in each. And again, we'll cover this later in the demo. What thing that we need to know is the information, so making sure that you've got this correct. So we've got a couple of infographics here, and what you can see is that we've got things like flooring, splashbacks, lighting, cabinetry, worktops, benches, and then in the bathroom, things like the bath mirrors, the tiling, etc. All of this has to be considered at the specification stage. Now, the information that's required, depending on what stage of the REBA planner works it is, can vary quite a lot. It could be something quite minimal to have a placeholder spec, right through to stage 4 at the technical design stage, where they really need that key performance data, particularly with things like sustainability. For those manufacturers that produce water, producing products, so taps, showers, that kind of thing, and electrical components as well. So whether you're making ovens or refrigerators or lighting that sits within cabinetry or something like that, having the power outputs for those is also really key now in understanding the sustainability criteria. And obviously not forgetting things like FSC certification if you're making things out of timber. So getting all of the data in one place is great. Having that all in a library such as MBS Source, so people can actually search for all the products in one place, is key as well, and making sure that you can get the access to the specifiers that you want to reach. So where would a specifier start? Well, as I've just alluded to, obviously there are absolutely thousands of manufacturers in this sector. It's quite a wide remit. Now, the specifier could individually go to each of those manufacturers' websites. That's great for you because there's no competitors on there. But from the specifier's perspective, it makes things really time consuming and often quite difficult because of the different formats. So if you think of the likes of maybe Auto Trader or Rightmove or Amazon, where you as a typical consumer can go to a single website and everything's under one roof, you could search for a multitude of different products, or you can search for a house and then filter by 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, etc., and it narrows down the searches. That's effectively what the specifiers use MBS Source for. So prior to being known as MBS Source, MBS had 3 core products. We had the RIBA product selector, which a lot of people may be familiar with. This started off as the Green Book. So the architects would have had this on the shelves. It then went to a website and got that more broader reach. So the contractors, engineers, etc., were using this as well. We had the National BIM Library and also MBS Plus, which allowed all of those product listings to be placed into the spec tool. To date, everything has been rolled into one platform. And like those Amazon's Rightmove Auto Trader type scenarios, you can actually search for products and filter down by the categories that you need to narrow the product types down. Again, I'm going to give a demo of this later on. So hopefully if there's any questions, they might answer those then, but feel free to ask them later on. I'm going to talk a bit now about how specification works. So for anybody that's joined us today and they're quite new to the specification sector or maybe complete novice to it, I think it's probably a good idea just to give an indication of what a specification is. So specification is a structured document that provides product information or system information for a construction project. Now, regardless of whether that's a bridge or whether it's a new hotel, a specification will be written to ensure that all of the parameters that are needed and all of the categories of products that are selected and installed on site are performing and or as they should be to make sure that they're fit for purpose. Now, MBS was founded in 1973. We've got a little image on the top left screen there of the first edition of the MBS. And this was a series of sheets that people could photocopy and then they'd fill them in. This went to floppy disk in the 80s and then CD-ROM in the 90s. Then it was a downloadable software. But now it's all on the cloud. So MBS, there's no comparative product to MBS Chorus on the market for the UK specification community. So if your specifiers that you're talking to are writing specs, which they will be, and sort of it's part and parcel of the job, they're going to be using MBS Chorus, or if not, it's going to be Word. Now, there's a lot of benefits in using a specification tool in the fact that these things are kept up to date with regards to building regulations, relevant standards that affect different products, particularly today where we're in a world where building safety and the critical nature of that is really at the forefront of people's minds, ensuring that people are staying up to date. Is absolutely key. So it's something that MBS have been doing for over half a century now, and then it's something that is really embedded and integrated into the culture of the workplace and everybody that's actually designing and building. This is the specification marketing cycle. Now, we've got this as a free to download infograph. If you visit the mbs.com and in the search bar, just type in specification marketing cycle, anybody can go and download this. But what it does is it talks through the stages of a project in the specifier's eyes, and it aligns it to the RIBA plan of works. So how this works is Stage 1, which is the little orange bit on the circle around the outside edge, is typically where planning permissions sort. So at this particular stage, the specifier is going through an awareness process. They're going to be looking for particular products, implementees, particularly around the building envelope and functionality with internals. But they're going to want to be learning about things as well, because they know about all the different work that they've got coming up with regards to spatial coordination and technical design. So CPD sits very high here as well in demand. For any manufacturers that have considered CPD, MBS facilitate the RIBA CPD process. Architects in particular have to conduct 35 hours a year to gain 100 points, which is achieved through attending CPDs across 10 core curriculum topics within the RIBA core curriculum. We then move into stage 2. So this is the concept stage. Now things start to get a little bit more involved with the manufacturers here. So that interest moves from awareness through to people actually starting to plan things. So you could have the early instigation of the BIM model being developed here. So this is where your website, libraries like MBS Source, your product literature for people to reference things through, case studies to look at. So maybe they want to look at where your products have been used in a similar project before, because it could be a new type project to them, or it could just be keeping up to date with relevant industry trends. But then BIM content as well, if that's available, they can download those and start to place these in the model. We then move to stage 3, which is the spatial coordination stage. And this is where products really start to be selected. So the outline specification will be written at this particular point, and MBS Source and MBS Chorus are paramount in that. So if you can get your products in MBS Source, it makes sure that they are then in the specification writing software, which is MBS Chorus. Moving into stage 4, the end game here, this is the technical design stage, is getting the final specification written. So the specifier will be flat out making sure that the specification is concise, accurate, and complete. So if your products can get into the specification, this is effectively the last port of call for that to get in, or before it's validated and moves into the construction phase. So if you're in the specification at stage 4, it should go through to procurement at stage 5 and move forward from that point forward. Once construction's done, in today's age where we're looking for this golden thread of information, all of this data, whether it's through Chorus or BIM, whatever it is that they're using, is captured digitally, and that digital asset information is passed on to the client. This can refacilitate orders, renewals when things come to have renovations done in years down the line. All of the data of what's in the building is there for them to easily access in a digital format, and it allows people to make selections of the same vein of what was specified originally. There's some outside facing factors that are influencing this quite heavily, and I touched lightly on these earlier, but obviously safety is an absolute paramount one at the moment, particularly for safety critical products. So anything that generates heat or could be quite flammable or has a specific function. The draft building safety bill is going through the processes at the moment, and that will be the Safety Act when it's launched next year. The Building a Safer Future report that Dame Judith Hackett wrote was obviously the predecessor to this, and everything that's aligned to it. There's also things like the Code for Construction Product Information that all sit in this same remit that are trying to make the industry a lot safer. And for manufacturers, the key thing here is making sure that your product data is digital and structured. If you can get that done, a lot of the battle's won, so people can make accurate decisions based on what your product actually does. Then sustainability. So this is arguably the number one priority that as a race or as a species we need to make sure that we improve upon. The building safety bill is one thing that's improving safety, but we had the Climate Change Act in 2008 that was focusing on climate change. We have COP26 around the corner, so the sustainability conference is going to take place in Glasgow, and we've seen the IPCC report of this month, and we're in a bad place with regards to temperature rise. Now, construction is responsible for around 40% of emissions, or the built environment is. Now, the sad thing is that out of all those tons of emissions that we generate as a human species, the Earth can only absorb half of it. So we need to lower these, and specifiers in particular are being put under the cosh to design and build more sustainably. The RIBA launched their 2030 climate challenge, which there's a little image of that there. If anybody wants to take a look, visit architecture.com and you can freely download that. But it's calling upon its members to make more sustainable decisions and aim for that net zero goal. So for you as manufacturers, if you can provide this type of information, whether it's the performance criteria, whether it's how you manufacture it, if you've gone to the lengths of measuring your embodied carbon, all of these types of things are going to be really, really appreciated by the specifier and stand you in good stead of getting that specification. So how can you help? Well, I've sort of put this in the top 5 scenario. There are other things that you can do, but the key ones for me really, I'd say, is ensuring your product's digitized. So if you've got your data structured and readily available, it's going to make the specifier's job a hell of a lot easier. For a lot of the manufacturers I've worked for, data was stored in a variety of different places: Excel, PDFs, could be on a website, it could be in a catalog, it might be in somebody's mind. Everybody's got that one person that's been with the company for years and years and seems to know everything, and if they ever disappeared, things would be pretty grim. But getting it structured, digital, hosting, whether that's in Excel, something simple, but even better if you can get that done on your website, or even better hosted in something like MBS Source where the templates are already structured for you, it's going to make that selection by the specifier easier. Third-party certification is the next one. So in a world where we've got to prove that we are meeting safety demands and we're meeting sustainability demands, having third-party accreditation that your product does what you're claiming it does is absolutely paramount on there. And getting that hosted on your website or on a third-party site like MBS Source is going to be really easy for the specifier to access, and it saves that loads of hassle and time of the communication or potential miscommunication. Promoting the life cycle value of your products. So it could be that your product might not necessarily be the most sustainable it's built, but if it lasts for 100 years, it could have benefits there. The other thing is longevity in this. So as part of sustainability calculations, people will be looking at life cycle costing and life cycle analysis. And a lot of that is, when will the product need to be renewed later down the line? How long is the building going to last? Particularly with public funded projects, hospitals, schools, prisons, that kind of thing. It was the whole intention of why the government introduced the BIM Level 2 program. So that asked for something called COBE, which was effectively a big spreadsheet that allowed for better asset management. So having the life cycle value of products can improve that as well. Promoting the sustainability of products, we touched on that. If anybody wants to know more of how you can do that, drop us a note at manufacturers@thembs.com. We've got a lot of functionality set in within the platform already that can help you with that, but also professionals within the business that can give you some advice as to what to do. And then lastly, having BIM content. Some people think that this is a bit of a nice to have, or it's a bit of a fad, but effectively, if you've provided CAD files or anything in the past, EWGs, in the architectural sector, BIM files have effectively replaced those now. But ultimately, it can do so much more. So going back to those sustainability calculations, going back to the scheduling, the data sets for people to do the asset management, the BIM content is the thing that facilitates all of that. So again, if you want to know more, drop us a note. And all of that really is why MBS is so trusted by so many people. We've got a snapshot here of a lot of brands that sit within the kitchen and bathroom sector, some that will be quite clearly obviously known, that there's quite a lot of household names on there as well, but even down to the small business. And the reason that we've got such a varied sort of customer base is that it doesn't matter whether you are that multi-million pound conglomerate or whether you're a £100,000 turnover SME. The MBS platform gives you the same opportunity to get in the specification regardless of your size. If you want to know a bit about what specifiers say, if you visit thembs.com, we've got a load of case studies on different things and a load of knowledge articles as well. But I've got an example here from David Miller Architects. Now, these were pioneering BIM from quite an early day. And what David's saying here is that as a designer, they've found greater opportunities to collaborate with manufacturers who understand the benefits that BIM presents. So they are actively using content. Now, in this particular case, it was actually myself. I was the BIM manager for Ideal Standard at the time when this particular project was being done. So first-hand experience of that, it does happen. So it's something to consider, but the proof's in the pudding there that we've got the actual specifiers communicating it. And then from the manufacturer's side, we've got some of the brands here. So Frankie across the kitchen and washroom sector, Symphony Kitchens, obviously standalone, and Rocker, one of the largest sanitary ware companies in the world. All of these trust us to get them in front of specifiers, whether it's through the BIM opportunities that we can provide, whether it's through the specification platform, or whether it's through CPD. The RIBA CPD, as I mentioned earlier, is possibly the most trusted CPD process in the world because it's actually vetted by the RIBA. So it's trusted by everybody that if they take a CPD delivery from a manufacturer that's had it assessed in that sense, that it's going to be of the highest quality and the highest educational value. Okay, at this particular point, I'm going to hand over to Tom, and then once Tom's finished, I'll move into a live demo and we'll wrap up. Try not to take up too much of your day. But Tom, if you're ready, I'll hand the reins over to you, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Lee, and thank you for that presentation up to now, a lot of which is you'll join the dots, hopefully, with what I'm about to say. So I'm Tom Reynolds, I'm Chief Executive of the Bathroom Manufacturers Association, and I've been with the trade body for about 2.5 years. I've been Chief Executive for about two years now, since October 2019. So a little bit about the association. We are a trade body of over 50 corporate members. Many of the companies that you'll see on this panel here and the brands that are represented correlate with some of those logos that appeared on Lee's slide towards the end of his presentation there. And that BMA's members really represent all of the recognizable brands that produce fixtures and fittings that go into the UK's bathrooms. We think we have about 80% of the market by value represented within the BMA. So a significant coverage within our membership. We also have 25 affiliate members, and these are companies and agencies that have an interest within the bathroom sector. Often they're suppliers to bathroom manufacturers, or otherwise have an interest in the success of the sector. And I'm very pleased to say MBS is among our affiliate membership, and you can see their logo on the bottom of this slide. So the association's been around since about 2001. It took over from a predecessor trade body, and there's been representation of bathroom manufacturers in some guise, some way, shape or form for over 100 years. But since 2001, we've been set up as the Bathroom Manufacturers Association, and our focus really is threefold. We provide networking opportunities to bring the industry together and discuss various different issues of interest. Secondly, we provide information to those members with any updates that they need to be aware of from a policy development or technical development point of view. And thirdly, we lobby on behalf of our members to ensure that the best possible conditions exist for them to carry out their business effectively. And that includes trying to influence product standards to get the optimum product standards for bathroom manufacturers. But equally, it involves lobbying in Westminster as well, especially given the return of competencies from Brussels to Westminster. So they're the three things that we do. So our two strategic priority areas, and hopefully this is where you'll start to see the joining of the dots and why we're very, very interested in digitalization. So the first area is around product compliance. So why are we interested in this? I mean, there's two very straightforward reasons why this is at the top of our agenda. Firstly, ensuring that products comply is about protecting the consumer. If a product doesn't meet the standard which it should be required of it, then not only is that putting the safety of the individual user at risk, it's also ripping off the consumer. If a tap has been cycle tested to a certain number, then you can guarantee that it's going to perform for the expected life. If it's not undergone those tests and it is going to be compliant with the relevant standard, then effectively you're getting a dud product. So it's really important for protection of the consumer and maintenance of the perception of our industry as manufacturers. So really important from that point. From a commercial point of view, it's also really important. If BMA members as credible manufacturers are spending an awful lot of money on testing and development and ensuring products comply with standards, but they're being undercut by competitors that aren't interested in any of that and are just putting it straight on the market, then that's unfair and it's not a level playing field. So two reasons there why we're interested in product compliance. What we're doing, there is currently there's a change going on in what product compliance looks like with the transition that is coming about as a result of leaving the European Union. We're moving from CE marking under the construction products regulations within the EU towards UKCA marking. There's there's a certain element of uncertainty around that, and we're trying to advise our members to ensure that they stay the right side of developments through that transition. The water regulations is a long-standing piece of regulation dating back to 1999, but I think very few people either within the water industry or the bathroom manufacturing industry would say that it's a straightforward piece of legislation. There's a certain degree of misunderstanding within the specification and installation market around the requirements of regulation 4 within the water regulations. There is not a need for any particular approval to say that you comply with the water regulations, but nevertheless there is a duty on manufacturers to demonstrate that they do comply with those regulations, and there's several different ways that they can do it. So we're trying to educate the marketplace on what those different methods of demonstrating compliance with the water regulations are. On traceability, this is a really interesting piece around, can we go a bit further than just providing a declaration of performance to go along with the CE marking? And in Europe, there's currently consideration around smart CE marking and the provision of additional information to support the affixing of a mark to say that your product complies. Because it's not just about doing the test when the product initially goes on the market. It's also about ensuring that you've got consistency within your production, so that all of your products are complying with those initial tests. So we've got some members that are doing really interesting things around traceability, like showing videos of the test facility and how it's traceable with the products that are actually coming off the factory line now. And there should be a way to link that better with what is available to the specifier or the customer. So this is an area where we're really interested in, and we're also interested in around market surveillance for product compliance. This is something which is really developing with some of the things that Lee mentioned around the building safety bill. The OPSS is really starting to get some teeth and interest in market surveillance to make sure that construction products comply. And we're very supportive of that, and have made budget submissions to say that the department, that particular department, should be better resourced in order to really go out there and police the market, so there is a level playing field. So that's priority area number 1. Number 2, and again this chimes really closely with what Lee was saying, is sustainability. Clearly, as a sector, given that 60% of water use within the home it takes place within the bathroom, water efficiency is central to a lot of our activity around sustainability. And there's some policy developments here which both members and specifiers need to be aware of. So the government's currently considering setting up a mandatory water labelling requirement. Bathroom manufacturers already put a lot of their products on something called the Unified Water Label, which can demonstrate to the specifier or the consumer the water using credentials of the product, for instance, the flow rate on a shower or tap, or the flush volume of a WC. So this is an area where we're very active and are keen to promote better water efficiency. Our products, after all, rely on a secure supply of water, and there's an alarming level of water scarcity within the UK, with the Environment Agency warning that we could be facing within 20 years routine droughts and restrictions on water use. And that's clearly not good if you're producing showers. So this is a real area of interest to us, and of course does link with product information all the way along. Circular economy too. We've already seen a duty to repair on certain white goods within the kitchen market, but extended producer responsibility for repairability is going to be coming at some point. And some of the things that Lee was talking about around re-engagement and the life cycle assessment of products is something that we need to be developing in a more mature way now. And also, thirdly, we're active on net zero within a sustainability agenda, both in respect of our own operations as manufacturers, taking carbon out of the production process wherever we can, but also, of course, our sector's contribution to making the UK's 27 million homes more carbon efficient and moving towards net zero as quick as possible. One of the largest contributors to the carbon impact of one's home is heating hot water. So if you've got a more efficient shower, or a shower that is recycling heat, then you are going to have a more efficient home, and you're going to be closer to net zero. So clearly the bathroom sector has got a role to play here. To a certain extent, this slide's a little redundant, because you can naturally draw the dots between what I've said around our priorities as a sector and the opportunities of digitalizing product information, which is afforded not just by MBS, but their other solution providers, but of course through the different MBS products that are available. So if you look at our two strategic focus areas in the abstract, transparency of product information that can flow through the system must lead to better compliance. Operational data on buildings once they've been come into use is going to lead to better sustainability. And just one example of that might be leaky toilets, which is something that we've been very active on in the last year. If that more advanced BIM and re-engagement offer that is afforded by having good building data just flags up to the facilities manager that it's time you went to check the toilet flush valves for their effectiveness, because it's a certain number of years on from installation. That is going to have a dramatic effect on the water consumption and the detrimental impact of leaky loos, for instance. So real opportunities to improve what we all do using better product information. But going beyond those two strategic focus areas for us here, there's the simple fact that this is the future of the industry. There are big structural challenges for construction around labour, around productivity, and some of the challenges laid down by Dame Judith Hackett around developing a golden thread of information to ensure building safety. These are things that aren't going to go away, that we really need to address head on. And we can only really do that by capitalising on a good source of data and bringing together information in a way that enables better collaboration. And product digitalisation of product information is a key part of that. And if you think as a sector, kitchens and bathrooms are about 80%, 70 to 80% RMI led, so refurbishment, maintenance and improvement. If you think that it doesn't touch RMI, that this is just specification for new shiny hotel projects and so on, I think you need to perhaps think again, because the RMI, the Construction Leadership Council's RMI group, is in the process of developing a digital maturity matrix to actually say, where are we now as an RMI sector in terms of our use of digital technologies, and how can we make that step change to get better and use that data more effectively. So there's activity afoot to drive forward all parts of the construction industry. RMI is going to be a crucial component of that as well. So it's becoming an expectation, we believe that is a good thing for all of the different areas that I've discussed around our focus, but also just advancing the industry. And there's just my final slide, Lee, just to thank MBS for putting on this webinar today, and look forward to seeing the demonstration.
Thanks very much, Tom. Some great points covered there. I think the RMI piece is obviously one that's a big focus. Refurbishment is key in reaching the sustainable goals that we've got. But no, thank you very much, and hopefully we'll see you soon. So with that note, I'm going to move over and do a rest of the presentation with the demonstration. So specifying with MBS. So this is the MBS platform. Effectively, MBS have two core products. We've got MBS Source, which you can see here, and we have MBS Chorus, which is a specification writing software. MBS Source itself is a one-stop shop for specifiers to go and search for anything relating to manufacturers, construction products, systems, materials that they want to look. You can see here the historical nature. So MBS Product Selector and MBS Plus have all been rolled into this one platform. We can have key manufacturers, featured case studies, etc. We've got a lot of helpful free-to-use links at the bottom that people might want to take a look at. But in respect to the functionality of the platform itself, we can search within this. We can search by categories or manufacturers, but the majority of people tend to go through the search bar. So if we were going to look for something, I don't know, say, let's just type in kitchen in there, you can see straight away that it brings back different options within there. If I was going to look at kitchen drawer units, you can see that we've got these different manufacturers that bring things in. Through the filters on the left-hand side, we can check that we've got the right type of product that we were looking for. It obviously picks up spelling errors and terminology, so it uses search engine optimization to rank the listings most applicable to what you've actually typed in. We can filter by manufacturer. We could filter by those that just have digital objects. So by that we mean BIM content, so Revit families, etc., that kind of thing. And then what we can also do is actually compare these products. So say we wanted to compare this product to that one, you can see that it's adding it to the top. So very, very similar to any of the sort of e-commerce sites that you'd be used to. We can actually click on those and then we can compare the data for each one side by side. For the specifier, being able to compare one product for the next in this format absolutely saves so much time and ensures that what they're picking best meets their requirements. So it's really, really great to have the products listed in such a way to do that. If we then visit the manufacturer, for example, they can host things such as case studies. So this is where we can go and view those. And if we just take a quick look at this one, if you want to read more, it would actually divert you to the manufacturer's website. So great news for you. We're giving you that traffic that's pushing towards your site. We can go back and we can look at the literature. So you can add things like catalogs, installation manuals, guides, anything that you have that you want to add in. We can add your third-party certificates. So if you've got things like FSC, RAS, BBA certificates, you name it, all that kind of thing can be uploaded. There's also the About Us section. So the manufacturers can actually list all their information in there. But going back to the product specifically, when we would list a manufacturer's product, and if I just click on one of these as an example, we will classify things to two different codes. So we've got Uniclass, which is the classification system that specifiers would use to classify their products and systems for a BIM project, perhaps, but it's a very modern way of doing it. But we also historically do the old MBS building common arrangement to work section. So whether you're used to working with M13 specs, M12s, whatever it is that you're doing, we actually facilitate both. And then we will classify each product to its own individual product data template. How that then links into the platform, and what I've got here is just a demo project that I would use for webinars. This is how the specifier would set up their project. So MBS Chorus is a subscription-based software, and as we mentioned earlier, we've got about 3,500 architectural practices, contractors, and engineers using this. and they will write their spec. So typically there would be a specification set up for each, and a bit of Blue Peter style. Here's one we made earlier. So I've got one for kitchens. Now to add a specification, it's relatively simple. They just go up to add spec up there, but I've got one that we were looking at here. So kitchen drawer units, they would add the classification. You can see there it's got the uniclass code and the title of what it is. This might be, I don't know, new kitchen extension, for example. It could be anything that's going in there. Cupboards. And then they'd want to specify the manufacturer and all the specifics. Now the USP for MBS, so anything that's in MBS chorus is also, that's an MBS source, is also an MBS chorus. So when I click on this, you can see straight away that we've got all of these different manufacturers. So if I just look at this one from Symphony, for example, we can go down and we can check all the product data. It's exactly the same as you would see in chorus. But once we've decided that that's the product that we want to specify, the specifier just simply has to click this add button, and it actually drops that manufacturer into the spec. They can then go through and pick all the parameters that are maybe optional, so different colors. So they might be wanting to go for pure gloss white in this particular case. Once they've made all those decisions, they can maybe decide that, yep, we want to write the specification on how this is going to be installed. So we can also do that. So the specification doesn't just cover the products themselves, it also covers how these things are installed. So if I hit save now, straight away you can see that that's dropped in the clause for this, and that can be edited. It might be that there's special notes that people want to add in. It can all be done and saved. Likewise with systems, if someone's specifying a system, it would start with the hierarchical S code at the top, and then they'd specify the individual products that make that up, which would then in turn drop them down underneath here for them to fill in the individual components. Alongside this, there's also something called the masters functionality. Now, what I've got here is an example of an educational building. So a lot of specifiers, they won't reinvent the wheel every time they come to write a spec. They'll have a set of templates, what we refer to as masters, that they will then utilize time and time again, that will have each of those templates in for the required building types and the location types within those. So in this particular example, we've got educational buildings, and we've got some different specs. So early years sanitary ware, somebody's designing a school, a primary school, for example, there's going to be products that they'll use time and time again, regardless of whether it's from one manufacturer or not, but the templates and the spec will all require the same product types. So they can build this suite of masters up. They can then select the products that they want to add. And in this particular case, say that it was very young children, they were conscientious that they might be scared of the hand dryers, so they're going to go with the paper towel dispensers. They can quite quickly pick out the products that they don't want to include. But then from that, they can just copy this master direct into the project. And as we can see here, I've got my demo sample. Hit next step, pick the specification. I want to add that to my sanitary ware spec, and paste that in. Now, all of those components have been added to the specification. It's also great for manufacturers. Chorus isn't just used by the specifier, it's also used widely by a lot of manufacturers that provide specification writing as a service to the design community. Obviously, that's a great way of getting your foot in the door, but it also saves the specifier time and mitigates risk, because you as manufacturers obviously know your products and systems better than anybody else does. So if it's something that you're interested in, if you'd like to learn more about how you can write specs or collaborate directly in the project with the specifier, please drop us a note. I think the last thing to touch on is BIM and how this works. So I've just got Revit here. We've got plugins available for ArchiCAD and Vectorworks as well. But unfortunately, I'm only trained in using Revit at the moment. So what we have is the 3D model. We've got a bathroom here. We've got a kitchen in this particular one. And this is just the demo sample that comes in with the software. But to my right-hand side, what we have is two MBS panels. We've got the BIM library set up, and then we've also got MBS Chorus. So I can log into MBS Chorus within here and log in. And then just ask me for my password. So this is capturing all of the data, and I'm going to show you how the analytics work off the back of this in the background. I sign in, and then within this project list, I can actually access all of those projects that we see without actually having a separate web browser. One of the great things to do, and if I just pick on the kitchen spec again for now, say we wanted to add some content, it brings in across the top this function called model. Now what I can do is hit the scan model button, and what Chorus does is goes away and scans that whole Revit model and pulls in all of the relevant products, which you can then associate to the spec. Now that's great because as well as being associated to the specification, it does mean that if the spec gets changed later down the line and the BIM model doesn't, or vice versa, it'll actually flag that up. So in a world where we're trying to ensure that the specification and the design are the same, and these things are obviously going to be validated through the Hackett stage gates that are coming in for stage gates 2 and 3. It's making that a lot easier, but also it can help deter the value engineering process where somebody might procure something and it doesn't necessarily match in on the spec or on the BIM model. So it's going to help there. The last thing to show you is the BIM. So in the BIM library itself, we can, I don't know, let's look for kitchen sinks. Let's have a look for that. So get everything, including the kitchen sink. Hit the search button. It brings back some options in here. There's quite a number of different things. But if I want to add that to the model, I can just pick this. It's just updating it to the format that I'm working in. We can just drag and drop wherever we were going to place that. We can add that in. You can see now that we've now got this workspace design product within there. We can interrogate the data within it. So all of this is relating to the manufacturer. So we've got links back to the manufacturer's website, all of the relevant information. So going back to that asset information management and the stuff that Tom was talking about, MBS can facilitate all of this for you within the BIM data. That can be scheduled. It can be used to pass on to the client. There's a load of different things. So that's what they can do with the BIM data. And also one of the obvious things that you can do with BIM is the visualization. So we might want to be communicating the design intent to the client. Might be doing some rendering very, very quickly through that BIM content, set up the different rendered images if we want. So if I drop into this particular project within here, we can quickly set an angle and then we can start to edit that. We can add some of the colors in. We can change the visibility if we want here. So say we wanted to look at it in a realistic format. Just give it a second to catch up. It's obviously got no lights on at the moment, but we could view that in a variety of different ways. We can then hit the render button. So whether we were going to render in the cloud or render directly in the software, we can do that. Just to wrap up some examples of how we would do this. This is the type of render that Revit can do. So this is one that I did whilst I was a sanitary ware manufacturer. All of this content was available within the National BIM Library, so it's hosted on MBS. And what you can do with that is absolutely fantastic. And there's nothing needed other than a Revit license and the BIM content to do that. So the specifiers are doing this quite a lot. A lot of them, they might want to go one step further, and with a few sort of plugins, and this one in particular, Enscape, it's a company that we've done a few webinars with in the past. If you'd like to know more about the BIM and visualization side, visit the mbs.com. But this particular render here is done through a BIM model, and it's using a virtual reality app called Enscape, which is really great value for money and does some absolute wizardry. So if you're looking at communicating that design intent yourself, this is great, but it just backs up the need of why the specifiers are looking for your 3D models, as well as the production data. There's also the visualization side, particularly with kitchens and bathrooms being so aesthetic. So obviously, once all those products of yours have been specified, whether the BIM models have been downloaded and dropped in, you're going to be wondering, what does that mean to you and how can you get those project leads from that? So MBS has a very compelling analytics platform. From this, you can see here, we've got just a demo example because of GDPR laws. We can't actually show you any specific manufacturer's results, but for your own page, this is what you would see. So straight away on the overview, you can see that we've got how many times you've been added to specification, and that can be configured to a date range there. It's live, so it could be the past day, it could be the past 2 years, whatever you want to set that up as. Impressions, so how many times your brand and products have been seen on the platform, and then views, so how many times somebody's actually clicked on them and taken a look. And then added to spec is how many times you physically had your products added to specifications within projects. You can scroll down and see the different product overviews. But if we take a look at the products themselves, you can see that within those 22 project specifications, there's actually been 72 products added to specs for this particular manufacturer in that time period. So we can take a look at some of these, and if I just select this one, you can see that this particular product has been specified by Alpha Architecture, and it was used on Newton Primary, and the project was in Kent. So if you've got regional sales representatives that are working in different areas, you can actually output these as an Excel and share those for people to follow up on. If we look at this particular product, you can then see that this particular product's been specified multiple times by that same practice, all of the project details down there, and then the other practices that have specified this and the dates when it was done. So you can follow up whether this is a hot lead or not. We've got a little note that says not shared here. Now, these tend to be few and far between, and it's predominantly for projects that have got high security. So it could be something like a prison or London Underground station, where if the data got out into the wrong hands, it could be quite detrimental as a security risk. But again, those are few and far between. So the majority that you will have all of these details written within. We also get the same for your literature case studies, so who's downloaded what and who's looked at what. You get all the analytics from those as well. So that's a beneficial tool. It gives you that return on investment from the platform as well, obviously getting you in the specification, knowing who's done that. So just going to wrap up now and do the summary, and then let everybody get on the way. So key takeaways, I think really to get specified and engage with designers early, BIM content and quality specification data is great. The BIM content itself has opened the door to a lot of manufacturers to get in as early as sort of stage 2 of the planner works. And obviously the specification data is absolutely paramount in making sure that you can actually get into the specification. The products are in demand. We've gone through a lot of the slides here, and obviously MBS and the different brands that you've seen that we've already got, and the searches that we get in, and the amount of specifications that are being written. People are looking for your products. So if you'd like to know more about how we could help you deliver that and help you with more orders, then just drop us a note. And then lastly, but not least, safety and sustainability. The credentials for these relating to your products and how you manufacture, etc., are absolutely high on the agenda of any specifier. So make them known. We can help you with that. The platform can help facilitate a lot of the data that you've got. Or if you're unsure of where to go, again, just feel free to drop us a note and we'd be more than happy to talk you through it. So next steps then, I've gone through these contact details, all of the knowledge articles, information about MBS and what you might want to do or what you can do with the platform even is available at mbs.com/manufacturers. Or if you want to drop us a note, you can call us on the number there or email us at manufacturers@mbs.com. Some of the things that we can offer you, we can discuss the aspects that are driving specification, which we've touched on loosely in this webinar, but ultimately give you that advice as what specifiers are looking for and how best to position your products around that. We can give you a more in-depth BIM overview if needed, and effectively the sort of main thing that people may want to see is this one-to-one demonstration of the MBS platform. So we can facilitate all of those above points. And if you'd like to know more about that, please drop us a note. I'd like to thank Tom from the BMA for joining us today. Tom's presentation was great, and it's nice to always get that third-party input in these things, just so it's not MBS sort of explaining what's going on. These things are real, and if people want to know more about it, please stay tuned. We've got more webinars coming soon, but we've got a load of content available already on the website. On that note, thank you very much and have an absolutely great day. Thanks.